WNYC Studios is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Brian Lehrer on WNYC. Now to the latest way that President Trump is trying to make it more difficult for foreigners here legally to stay in the United States. We'll have an immigration lawyer who can't give personal legal advice per se, but he can speak generally about these whole new categories of people here legally who may now have to leave the country. Ironically, that's leave the country specifically if they want to permanently stay. This is because a week ago, right before the holiday weekend, so many of you may not have heard this in the news, the Trump administration announced a change in how green card or permanent residency applications would be handled for people now here legally in various categories, like on student visas, work visas, some folks who are married to U.S. citizens, and others will go down the categories. In a statement, USCIS, the Citizenship and Immigration Service, said, quote, "From now on, an alien who is in the U.S. temporarily and wants a green card must return to their home country to apply, except in extraordinary circumstances," unquote. Now, needless to say, this is causing alarm for many immigrants with families and jobs here hoping for permanent resident status. I will say there have been indications that the phrase extraordinary circumstances might apply to more people than it would sound like. But who this policy applies to and what the impact will be is still to be determined. So for a few minutes to try and bring more clarity to the change and answer some of your questions, if you're in one of these situations, we're joined by Allan Wernick, an attorney and senior legal advisor to the City University of New York Citizenship Now project, which is CUNY's free immigration law service program. Allan Wernick, always good to have you. Welcome back to WNYC.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Always happy to be here.
And listeners, we can take a few questions for Allan Wernick from you if you are in the process yourself, especially of seeking a green card from any currently legal but technically temporary category. Help us report this story and tell us if you've been notified of any changes to the process, or if you have a question for our guest. We can't promise individual legal advice per se over the radio, but Allan Wernick can speak in general terms, which might be helpful. So call or text us at 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. Allan, what does this term adjustment of status actually mean, and who does it apply to?
Well, there's two ways that people can have a final interview for permanent residence for a green card. One is adjustment of status, which is a process where you are interviewed for your permanent residence in the United States. You don't have to leave, and you have certain rights if you're denied to seek a review of your application. And then the other is called consular processing, which means typically go to your home country to be interviewed at a U.S. consulate abroad. And if you do the latter, consular processing, and the consular officer denies your application, you're basically stuck there, and there's very, very limited, almost no review of the consular's decision. So those are the two ways people become permanent residents. If you're approved at the consulate, then you would come to the United States, and upon admission to the United States, you would become a permanent resident.
And what categories of current people here legally, but I guess you don't call them immigrants if they don't have permanent residence status yet, does this new order from the Trump administration apply to? I mentioned people with student visas, work visas, some who are married to U.S. citizens. Refugees might be another category. Who should be alarmed here, or at least aware?
The memo basically includes almost everybody. There are a few exceptions, but like asylees, people who get their green cards through something called special immigrant juvenile status, refugees. Of course, we don't know whether USCIS will take this memo as a general guidance to deny more cases of adjustment of status, the process of interviewing here. So we don't know how asylees and these special immigrants and refugees are going to be treated, but under the guidance of the memo, they should not be included, the way the memo is written now. But everybody else who's here is what we call a non-immigrant. So that would include students, temporary workers, people who, and a number of people who are here on visitors who overstay, typically get their green cards through adjustment of status if they entered legally, even if they overstayed. So, for instance, somebody came as a visitor and they marry a U.S. citizen, and they are here unlawfully now, but they came in lawfully, that person, prior to this memo, would very easily be able to adjust status to be interviewed here and get their green card here. Now those people may have a difficult time. And I should say that we're expecting for more guidance on some of the questions like you just asked from USCIS. We hope to see that in the next week or two.
Well, they did, in fact, call this a reiteration, as opposed to something new, a reiteration of long-standing policy. But even if that's true on paper, to what extent were people in real life actually being required to return to their countries of origin and apply for green card status through their local consulates?
Well, people who entered unlawfully typically had to go home for their interviews. But people who interviewed here, there's some there's certain categories of people can adjust status. People who entered legally and are here legally. People who came as visitors who overstayed, but who are the spouse, parent of a 21-year-old U.S. citizen or then married child of a U.S. citizen under 21. Those people all typically could adjust status. It was not like a complicated or difficult thing. So they may say that they're basically applying the standard they've always applied, but that's just not accurate. Again, those cases, let's say someone is an international student, they married a U.S. citizen, they go to the interview. If they don't have a criminal record, that should be no problem. They shouldn't have to go home. Mainly people who go home are people who came in unlawfully. In other words, they came in, let's say, surreptitiously. They came across the border, what we call entry without inspection. Those people, almost with some limited exceptions, but most of those people had to go home for consular processing. So that's sort of an overview. And there are exceptions. Like within the law, there's always some exceptions to the general categories that I described.
So they want to expand this, what categories of people would need to go back to their countries of origin. Listener writes, this is, this is not a new policy. My friend got married in 1993. He is from Sweden, here legally on a student visa. She is from New York. When they got married, he had to return to Sweden for about 3 months. My understanding, Allan, is that appointments at local consulates can take months to years to get, and there's no appeal process should it be denied. So this would be a huge burden on someone with a spouse, children, a job or a home here, wouldn't it? The length of separation and the risk of permanent separation.
Yes, absolutely. And as to the writer, I would say there are exceptions, as I said, and I don't know the exact facts of that case, but yes, it's a huge burden, and it's I think that it's basically designed to discourage people from becoming permanent residents. A lot of people are not going to go for consular processing. Some people, if they've been here unlawfully for more than 180 days, in order to go for consular processing and be successful, they're going to need special permission called a waiver. Those waivers take forever. So my guess is that for a lot of people, they're going to forego trying to get a green card, assuming that the policy is not liberalized, in the next couple of weeks. They're going to forego trying to get a green card and just stay here and hope that the policy will eventually change. I should also mention that we expect that there will be litigation, some lawsuits filed within the next few days or week, challenging this policy, and of course that might impact people's decisions.
Right.
And people should, I would advise everyone to try and get legal advice before you go to your interview, if you've already filed for adjustment of status, or before filing for adjustment of status. And if Ryan, if I can just take a minute to say where you can go for some free or low cost advice,
Please.
you can get free application assistance at CUNY Citizenship Now, and the URL is cuny.edu/citizenship now, one word, or you can call 646-664-9400. I would also recommend the New York State Office of New Americans Hotline. They do a very good job of screening and referral, and their number is 800-566-7636.
It sounds like the goal here is to get a lot of people to self-deport. Like it isn't worth the trouble. If I have to go back there, then I'm going to go back there and establish a life. And that's just from a political standpoint. You're not here as a political analyst. You're here to give advice as a lawyer. But just very briefly, like that's probably what's going on here, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Or to have people stay here in hopes that they don't get popped by ICE, but not get permanent residence, not apply for permanent residence.
Yeah. And
I
then
think
they're
you're I
subject
think you're
to,
pretty accurate about that. I mean, there's no question about it. This is going to really hang up. If this is applied in a strict way, very few people are going to be getting green cards because people are not going to want to go home. And if they do go home, as you mentioned, it's going to take forever. The consulates are overwhelmed. There are 75 countries, and you can find out which countries there are at the CUNY website. There's 75 countries which they're not issuing visas at all at the consulates. So if that's about 50% of the people who are applying for green cards these days. So if you're from one of the 75 countries, consular processing is not an option for you. I mean, that's something you could argue at your adjustment status interview
right.
why you can't go home. But for those people, they basically have no choice. They either adjust status or they go home and live their life there, waiting for the policies to change.
Right. A lot of people don't even realize that there's a list that's up to 75 countries now
Yeah.
where people can't even come here from. Listener writes, how does this affect current green card holders when it comes time to renew? And just yes or no question, my understanding is that this would not affect green card renewals, correct?
That's correct. That's absolutely
And
correct.
also, I mentioned work visas before. The DHS Homeland Security Department replied to a question from USA Today saying there would be no, quote, noticeable impact on highly qualified applicants and skilled professionals who have followed the law, their language. So does that mean people here on H-1B visas, that particular kind of work visa, a lot of people in the tech industry in our area and others on H-1B visas, are they safe?
As my people say, from their lips to God's ear, the U.S. that may be true, and that could be one of the clarifications, and I'm hopeful about that. But if you look at the memo, footnote 20, it specifically says that people who are here in H-1B visas are not exempt from this rule. But I expect that I'm optimistic, and I expect that people who are here at H-1B, temporary professional work visas, O-1s, which are extraordinary workers, those people are likely to be okay if they haven't violated their status in any way. But let's say somebody's been here on an H-1B and they get married to a U.S. citizen and they quit their job at their H-1B because they have employment authorization and they go to another company where maybe they get paid more, the working conditions are better. Those people are no longer in H-1B. Once they quit their job, they're no longer in H-1B. Are those people going to be okay? I mean, those are professional workers. So we'll have to see. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out. Lawyers who have had these adjustment status interviews, some have reported that with some of these categories, like you're describing, like an H-1B, who people are still in status, have gone through. And, I'm hopeful. But, there's been no official pronouncement. I mean, I haven't seen that U.S. a Today article, but I think that sounds right.
Here's one story from a listener and then one closing question. Listener writes, my roommate has been here legally for 15 years on an artist visa. He filed for an artist green card 2 weeks ago, and these new rules are going to totally dismantle his green card application. He's a celebrated local musician and freelancer who will have to go back to Brazil for an indeterminate period of months, losing all of his gigs and his apartment. Also, he just paid around $15,000 for the legal fees and other green card application fees. This is a terrible policy which is designed to kick more people out of the country. Do you have anything to say to that particular person?
I would say this. One, it's possible that they will be included like the H-1Bs, and there'll be more, people who are in those kinds of visas, and they'll be more generous with those people. And the other thing, if you're famous, go to your adjustment of status interview. Let them try to deny you. That's exactly the kind of people that we want to go to their interviews, because if they get denied, then who's getting approved? So I think that person's probably going to be okay.
And the last thing, listener writes, can the Trump administration do this unilaterally, or do they need approval from Congress?
They may not need approval from Congress, but it's unclear whether the way they have done this. Well, let me just say, I can't answer that definitively. There's going to be litigation about whether they have a right to do this, because under the statute, if you did not work without authorization and you have maintained your status, you should be able to, and even in some cases, if you're married to a citizen, you haven't maintained your status, you should be able to adjust status, have your interview here. Now, the statute does talk about discretion, but discretion cannot be unfairly applied. So there will be litigation about this. We're going to find out, one, whether they need to go to Congress, which my guess is probably they do not, but we'll see. And two, whether they've gone about this in the right way, because they just can't, willy-nilly change the rules. There's certain procedures that typically the government is required to go through in order to change the procedures. And we'll see whether courts will find that they have violated those rules. And there are a number of cases, like with people who have temporary protected status in DACA, where the courts have found that the government has overreached their authority. So let's see what happens in these cases.
All right. Thank you, Allan Wernick, attorney and senior legal advisor to the City University of New York Citizenship Now project. You want to just give people that info again on where they can turn for free legal advice?
You bet. So the website for CUNY Citizenship Now, and all our services are free. And by the way, you don't have to be affiliated with CUNY in any way. It's open to the community. It's cuny.edu/citizenship now, one word. Or for CUNY Citizenship Now, they can call 646-664-9400. Or, of course, they can Google CUNY Citizenship Now. The other, a really good place to go is the New York State Office of New Americans hotline, and their number is 800-566-7636.
Allan, thank you so much. I think this was useful to a lot of listeners.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Brian.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.